So we are talking about technology improvements. So computer, internet, and antibiotics are three basic technological improvements. And the computer was born not for entertainment or email, but out of a need to solve a serious number crushing crisis. Because by 1880s, the U.S. population had grown so large and it needs a computer to calculate population. So as a result, the U.S. government created one which occupies a whole room. And for the internet, the first internet was called ARPA, which stands for Advanced Research Project Agency. It goes online in December, connecting four major U.S. universities, designed for research, education, and government organizations. And actually, the word internet was first used in 1982. And there's another bad thing for internet, which is a virus called the internet worm. Temporarily shuts down about 10% of the world's internet services in 1988. It's the first internet virus. And the last one, antibiotics. And the first antibiotics was penicillin, and it was discovered by Alexander Fleming in 1929, but it was not until the early 1940s that its true potential was acknowledged. And there are also downsides for it, which means like at first the development of antibiotics was faster than the resistance of bacteria, but after like 70 years, scientists have only managed to make improvements within classes while the bacterial resistance grows stronger. That's why antibiotics should be restricted to use right now. And we're going to talk about advantages.
Alright, so just some of the advantages of the new technology. So with things like cell phones and computers, obviously it's a lot easier to access information. And so the spread of knowledge is a lot easier. And then computers and information systems have improved efficiency and productivity in workplaces and in government. And then antibiotics have really helped to change the health industry. And then so some of the disadvantages, things like cars and factories in the early 20th century have had a big effect on the environment. And job loss is also something that has really kind of grown over the past couple decades. And this is kind of just like a chart that kind of like proves that. And then also things like corruption. One example of that would be what we learned about in the beginning of the year, which was about Edward Snowden.
So pretty much how the history is connected to the future is because these ideas came from like a foundation that started in like the early 1900s, even to like the 1860s, which where my topic started, gene therapy. And these basic ideas gave like a new idea of how it can be improved on. And these new ideas are only getting improved, but things like vaccines, antibiotics, they're not really so much getting improved, but since they have more of a resistance and more people are becoming aware of what's happening now, like the environment, global warming, the resistance to vaccines, and how gene therapy is really important to society. So how does advancements in the medical field help society today? Pretty much what gene therapy is taking your DNA and actually changing it. So you could change it to help cancer. You could also change it to you could change it your eye color. I just read a thing today that said they changed in the Stanford lab, they changed someone's genes so they don't age as much. It's like a 40% decline rate. And in 1969, Friedrich Miescher actually started this idea where the nuclei in the nucleus is actually present, and pretty much this is like how he thought of this idea based on the structure of the cell, and then Watson and Crick in I think like the early 1900s came up with this idea of like the double helix, and that's how our genes are actually formed.
In the medicine field, there's another stuff which is called vaccine, has also like improved greatly in these years. Louis Pasteur, who introduced the hope that all infectious disease could be prevented and even treated by vaccines, and vaccines were discovered, produced, and developed throughout the 20th century to help protect people. And as time goes on, there are more developments than discoveries of vaccines. And throughout the development of vaccines, lots of people, especially like parents, are rejected to this stuff because at first they thought these stuff are dangerous because injecting vaccines are like injecting bacteria to human bodies. And however, as more and more disease being cured by vaccines, like smallpox vaccines, measles vaccines, and polio vaccines, eventually they are like because for example, the smallpox vaccines cure like 5.0 million people every year. So eventually there are not as many people who reject vaccines as before, and because of vaccines, infant has much lower death rate, and people can avoid from getting deadly disease. Here's our works cited page.